In the Medina of Tangier, a caretaker unlocks the studded cedar door of the American Legation, the only national historic landmark the United States keeps on foreign soil, and props it open to the morning heat. In Fez, by mid-morning, a woman carries a tray of unbaked dough through lanes that have not widened since the year 859 toward an oven the whole street shares. At the southeastern edge of the Sahara, by lamplight, a man's hands sort dates into 3 grades: table, market, export. This is Morocco, a kingdom pressed between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, between Africa and Europe, that in 1777, under Sultan Mohammed III, became the first nation on earth to recognize American independence. It is also a kingdom that, within living memory, sent citizens who questioned its palace into desert prisons that appeared on no map, the same crown holding the door open and holding the key. What follows is a descent, north to south, from that first open door, down through the walled cities that learned to hold strangers, into the silence of the desert, and back out to the sea. The cedar panel swings inward on a corridor of cool tile, and the heat of the alley stops at the threshold. This house, 3 stories wrapped around a shaded courtyard, deep in the Tangier Medina, the old walled city, is the only site the American government has ever entered on its own register of national landmarks beyond its shores. Morocco recognized the young American Republic in 1777 under Sultan Mohammed III, when the 13 colonies were still fighting for the right to exist. And in 1821, the Sultan handed this house to the Americans, confirming a friendship already decades old. For 2 centuries, Washington has held it, longer than almost any embassy the country keeps abroad. Inside, in a glass case beneath a single lamp, white-gloved hands lift a letter written in an even, patient script, the recognition that opened the first door between the 2 nations. A few streets down, where the Medina spills toward the port, the Hotel Continental keeps its tiled lobby and its slow ceiling fans turning above an old ledger. This was the port hotel of consuls and couriers and traders, the room the century's traffic checked into when Tangier answered to many flags at once, an international zone administered jointly by France, Spain, Britain, and a half-dozen others, a city that belonged to everyone and to no single crown. Through the arch of one window, the harbor stands framed, the same water that carried the diplomats, the smugglers, and the exiled kings who signed the register in their turn. The pages are foxed now, and the ink has faded, but the names are still legible. A tray of tea moves out into the morning, and the diplomacy loosens into something plainer. A few steps below the hotel, at the Petit Soco, the small square where the Medina folds its lanes together, waiters set down glasses on tiled tables the size of a dinner plate, and the men who fill them are merchants and clerks and sailors rather than envoys. The square is barely 30 paces across, and by 9 o'clock, every chair along its edges is taken. The talk runs from the price of leather to the ferry times. This is the plainest thing a Moroccan town does. It sits and pours and stays a while. From the square, the lanes climb, narrowing and turning until they open at the Kasbah, the fortress height that crowns the old city. From the ramparts, the land falls away to water on two sides at once, the Mediterranean to the east and the Atlantic to the west. And across the strait, 9 miles off, the coast of Spain stands close enough to make out its hills on a clear morning. 2 seas and a continent, all within sight of a single wall. This is the geography that made the kingdom what it is, a country that has always looked outward because it has always had somewhere to look. But the threshold here opened onto a crowd. Every ship that crossed that strait, every caravan that climbed up from the south, arrived at a wall. And the walls inland, in Fez and Chefchaouen and Tetouan, had been learning to hold such arrivals for 1,000 years already.
A donkey turns into a lane barely wide enough to let it pass, its panniers brushing the walls on either side, and the light comes down in shifting bars through the reed screens strung overhead. Behind the ramparts of Fez, el-Bali lies the largest living medieval city in the world. Some 9,000 lanes and dead ends folded in on themselves behind a single wall. A place built across 12 centuries to take arrivals in. Cars have never entered here. Everything that moves through moves on foot or on the backs of mules, and the map of the streets has not been redrawn to make room for anything faster. The wall here works like a verb. It holds. Every lane leads eventually to a gate, and every gate once opened to someone who had come from somewhere else and needed a place to be absorbed. And the city, quarter by quarter, took them in. Deeper in, a fountain runs in a courtyard tiled to the edges, and rows of slippers wait at a threshold that no shod foot will cross. It was a refugee's daughter who raised this place. Fatima al-Fihri came from a family that had fled Kairouan in what is now Tunisia, and in the year 859, she spent her inheritance endowing a mosque and school that grew, over the centuries, into al-Qarawiyyin, recognized as the oldest continuously operating degree-granting university anywhere on Earth. Older than Oxford by more than 2 centuries, older than Bologna. She is said to have fasted through the years of its building and to have prayed only when the work was done. A woman's gift, made from money she chose not to keep, has outlasted every dynasty that has held the city since. Down one of the covered lanes, a boy balances a plank of raw loaves on his head and carries it toward the neighborhood oven, the wood-fired chamber where the whole quarter brings its dough to be baked. The baker knows each household by the marks pressed into the loaves, and by afternoon, the bread finds its way back to the right doorway. The oven belongs to no one and feeds everyone on the lane. One more way the Medina keeps track of who lives inside its walls. A short walk from the royal palace, the houses change their manner. Their balconies face outward onto the street, wooden and glassed, a way of building set down deliberately beside the gates of the crown. This is the Mellah, the Jewish quarter, placed by decision of the Sultan under his protection and inside the same walls, so that the people who lived here answered to the palace and sheltered beneath it. The arrangement was deliberate structure, another thread woven into the city. Coexistence written directly into its map. North and higher, in the folds of the Rif Mountains, a man dips a wide brush into a bucket of lime-washed blue and drags it down a wall in one wet stroke. And the color runs, settles, and dries a shade paler than it went on. Chefchaouen began in 1471 as a mountain fortress, and later took in Andalusian, Jewish, and Morisco exiles after the fall of Granada. The origin of its blue walls is still argued over, but the act of repainting has become part of the town's own inheritance. Every spring, by hand, house by house, the blue is renewed on step and stair, memory kept without pretending the color has only one beginning. East, along the same mountains, stands Tetouan, its facades white and ochre, its doorways arched in the Andalusian manner, its fountains tiled in patterns carried straight from Granada. The people who built it had lost a city and set about making it again inland, from memory, until the children of the exiles called the place the Daughter of Granada, a city rebuilt, stone by remembered stone, by the very people Granada had cast out. Arab and Andalusi, the free people of the mountains and the Jews of the quarter, whoever reached the wall and stayed, the city found the room. Century after century, refuge became routine, the ordinary work of a country that had learned to hold strangers. And by Friday, that routine is poured from a height into a glass.
Around Meknès, in fields that run flat from the city's walls, a woman bends into a row of spearmint, still wet with the night, and cuts a low bunch with a curved blade, the dew shaking loose from the leaves as she straightens. This is where the ritual begins, long before any glass is filled, in green rows grown for a single purpose. The tea a whole country drinks between its meals and across its afternoons. The mint is bundled, wetted, and carried to market before the heat can wilt it, so that by the time it reaches a kitchen, it is only hours from the field. In the covered lanes of a Marrakech market, the other two parts of the drink wait in sacks and cones. Green tea leaves shipped from far across Asia, and sugar pressed into hard white loaves that a merchant breaks with a small hammer, chipping off a piece and weighing it on a brass scale. The three together make a thé, the mint tea poured in every house in the kingdom, and not one of them grew from this soil. The leaf came the length of the trade routes, and the sugar arrived by sea, and yet nothing tastes more Moroccan than the drink they become. In a house off one of those lanes, a grandmother sets a dented metal pot over a low flame, packs it with tea and a fistful of mint and a broken lump of sugar, and when it has steeped, she lifts it high, a full foot above the tray, and pours a thin, bright stream down into a small glass until a pale foam rises on the surface. She tips the first glass back into the pot and begins again, twice and 3 times, because the height is what raises the froth, and a glass without its crown of foam is counted unfinished. Her hand stays steady above the tray, the stream holding thin and steady, and the tea is poured for anyone who crosses the threshold, sweet in the first glass and less so in the last. By evening, in the wide square of Jemaa el-Fnaa at the heart of Marrakech, the food itself comes out into the open, as rows of stalls light their burners and the smoke of grilling meat lifts under strings of bulbs. Families crowd onto shared benches, elbow to elbow with travelers and neighbors, and bowls of snail broth and plates of fried fish pass across the boards for a few coins. The square has fed the city this way for centuries, an open kitchen without walls, where the seat beside a stranger is simply the next seat. But the meal the country agrees on comes once a week, and it comes at home. On Friday, after the midday prayer, the couscous is set out, semolina steamed for hours above a pot of broth, mounded high and crowned with softened vegetables and a share of meat, and the family gathers around one wide dish and eats from the arc of it nearest each hand. It is the one meal that stops the week, cooked in nearly every house at nearly the same hour, and carried down the street to those who have none, so that a whole country, for an afternoon, is doing the same quiet thing. Around that dish, Morocco looks most like itself, open-handed and unhurried, and sure of who belongs. And yet, the same decades that filled these Friday tables held another story. For there were men who left their houses on ordinary mornings and never came back to the couscous, whose place at the dish stayed empty, who had done nothing but question the palace that kept its door open to the world.
South of the Middle Atlas, the road drops toward the desert along the Ziz, a river that cuts a green thread through bare rock and gathers, in its lower reaches, 100,000 date palms into a valley floor no wider than the water allows. The way runs on through Arachidia and down toward the sand, and travelers take it now for the palms and the gorges. But for a stretch of years within living memory, it was also a road that men were driven down in the backs of vehicles, blindfolded, toward places the maps refused to mark.
Between the early 1960s and the late 1980s, the decades Morocco now calls the Years of Lead, the state under King Hassan II, who held the throne from 1961 until 1999, answered dissent with disappearance. Students, soldiers, trade unionists, and ordinary citizens who spoke against the palace, or were only suspected of it, were taken from their homes and their streets, tried in secret or not tried at all, and moved out of sight. Some were held for weeks and returned. Others were driven into the desert and erased from the record, their families left to write letters that went unanswered and to ask at thresholds that stayed shut. Past Arakidia, in the dry country toward Rich, stood a prison whose name became the darkest word of those years. Tasma Mart was a secret barracks where, after a failed attempt on the king's life in 1971, dozens of soldiers were shut into cells they could not stand up in darkness, for as long as 18 years. Only 28 of the 58 men taken there came out alive. The rest died of cold and hunger and untreated illness. One of the survivors, Ahmed Marzouki, later set those 18 years down in a memoir, Cell 10, an account that reached a public which had been told the place did not exist. The prison appeared on no map, and the desert around it kept the secret the state would not admit. The same silence settled along other southern roads. At Agdzedz, where the Dra Valley opens its long line of palms below Ouarzazate, an old kasbah served for years as a place of secret detention, holding families and fighters out of reach of any court. From the outside, these were only earthen towers among the palms, the ordinary architecture of the south. The prisons wore the face of the country around them and gave nothing away. In a house in Casablanca or Rabat, or one of the southern towns, a mother kept her son's coat on its hook by the door through all the years he did not come home, and set, each Friday, one plate more than the family had mouths, the small arithmetic of a hope that would not close. Multiply that hook and that plate across the country, and the shape of the years of lead comes clear. Not a figure in a report, but a coat no one moved. What makes the wound particular is whose hand it was. The crown that in 1777 held its door open to a young and distant republic was the same crown that, 2 centuries on, held these men in the dark. Morocco has not buried the memory. In 2004, under Hassan's son and successor, Mohammed VI, the kingdom convened a public truth commission, the first of its kind in the Arab world, that heard the testimony of thousands, named the years aloud, and paid reparations to families who had spent decades not knowing. Those years are closed now, or as closed as such years can be. The roads that carried the vehicles south carry buses and freight today, and the desert that swallowed the men who questioned the palace has, for far longer than any prison, been something else entirely. Not a place of ending, but a road, a crossing, the oldest open door the kingdom ever kept. Far to the south and east, where the last road gives out, the ground turns to sand and rises. The dunes of Erg Chebi stand as high as 150 meters, a sea of them running toward the Algerian border, and at first light, a line of camels moves along a ridge with a driver on foot at the head of the rope. For 1,000 years and more, this was a road. It was the northern shore of a desert that traders crossed the way sailors cross water, carrying salt south and bringing gold and ivory north into the kingdom's markets. The caravan on the ridge is smaller now, and it carries travelers rather than cargo, but it keeps the old direction, out across the sand toward the horizon that always promised something on the other side. Where the sand meets water, the oases begin. In Skoura, among the palms, a man sits in the shade with a low table before him and sorts the season's dates by hand, moving them into 3 heaps as his fingers decide. Table, market, export. The softest set aside, the bruised ones kept back, the finest laid in rows for the crates that will leave the country. Morocco sends its dates, its argan oil, its citrus and olives out to markets it has traded with for centuries. And much of it begins exactly here, at one table, under one tree, in the patience of a single pair of hands. Downstream, on the old caravan road between the desert and Marrakech, the earthen towers of Ait Ben Haddou rise from a hillside above a shallow river, packed mud and straw, the color of the ground they stand on. This was a way station of the caravan route, a fortified village where merchants coming up from the Sahara rested their animals and paid their tolls before the long climb over the Atlas. Rain unmakes the mud walls, and hands remake them season after season. And the town has held this crossing since at least the 11th century, guarding the road that turned salt into gold. Nearby, at Ouarzazate, the Kasbah of Tauriat spreads in a maze of rammed earth rooms and towers, once the seat of a family that controlled the passes and taxed everything that came through them. A Kasbah is the fortified great house of a desert lord. The caravans it watched over are gone, their routes now carried by roads and rail. But the direction of trade has never changed. What the south grows and mines still travels north toward the sea. And the sea is where the country has always been heading. Far to the north again, back where this descent began, the land narrows to a headland at Cap Spartel, and here, the Atlantic meets the Mediterranean in a visible seam. 2 different blues pressed against each other off the point. Just beyond it lies Tangier Med, one of the largest ports on the whole of the Mediterranean, where container ships take on goods bound for 100 countries. Among that cargo moves the mineral the kingdom sits on, for Morocco holds
close to 70% of the world's known phosphate reserves, the rock that feeds fields on every continent. The caravans that once crossed the sand now cross the water in steel. But the habit is the one the Kasbah of Tangier taught at the start: to stand at the edge, face outward, and trade with every horizon within reach. 9 miles across that water stands Spain, and behind the headland, in an alley too narrow for 2 people to pass abreast, the same brass key still turns each morning in the same wooden door.
At the southeastern edge of the Sahara, the lamp is lit again, and the man who sorted the season's dates at first light closes the last crate, table, market, export, and sets it by the entrance for the road north, the long haul toward the ports and the water the whole kingdom has always leaned toward. In an alley of Tangier, the legation entrance is bolted for the night. In Fez, the oven the whole street shares has cooled, its last loaves already carried home. In 1,000 houses, the tea has gone to its 3rd glass and the pots are rinsed. 9 miles off, across the strait, the lights of Spain come on.